Josh, since you are the guest, I think it would be only polite for me to let you go first.
I appreciate it. All right, so my first one is it's really about the times that I have failed because I do long rides. Like that's my thing, long endurance stuff, 100, 200, 300 miles. And the first one is when you feel like you can't keep going, you need to eat. And really what this is about, it's not a bigger thing about nutrition necessarily. It's just I have failed things where I have stopped. I have felt like I wasn't trained enough. I couldn't keep going, and like I just didn't want to do this. And I'll be back next year to train with better training. And really, all I had to do was eat, like a lot.
I love that one because it also, uh, thinking about when I was getting started, the power of stopping to eat. Yeah, we can jump into all the grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight per hour that the World Tour guys are using now. But very simply, when you're getting started, stopping to eat has a beautiful way of segmenting a ride. It's like when you're reading a long story and you get to the end of a paragraph, there's almost like a exhalation. Now I can regroup and go again. That's why I used to love stopping to just eat. It's that little bit of time to pause and reflect.
Yeah, actually, that's what I do on my long rides. Get to the top of the climb, take a minute, enjoy the view, eat some food. But then I have also found that there are times where, like now I know there's this feeling, where I just need to eat like a lot, like, you know, 400, 500, 600 calories. Like I gotta inhale some food. And I would have finished many things that I didn't if I had just known that.
Well, a great tip I heard from a friend who inherited from another friend of his is World Tour, and that's how a lot of this stuff is passed along, whispers and whispers and whispers. Where if you get home from a ride and your first thought is, man, I need to eat, you've underfueled on that ride. You almost can't overeat on a ride during a ride. Like the logistics of overeating on a ride are very difficult. I've known many people that have gained weight off the bike by eating too much. I haven't known anyone ever that's gained weight by eating too much during a ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's pretty much impossible. I did some metabolic testing recently with a company called Instinct, and
Oh yeah, I had Sebastian Weber on the podcast. Really interesting guy.
nice. Yeah, I love their system is really cool. But what it came down to for me is if I ride at 165 watts and eat 400 calories an hour, I should be able to basically ride forever. But eating 400 calories an hour, that is really hard.
It's really hard, and a great tip for that for people is it's dividing your calories up between solids and liquids. So having some carbohydrates in your bottle. But I also like to, especially when I'm racing, subdivide my solids into stuff that's more homemade, like rice cakes, homemade flapjacks, and more race specific stuff. Like I've been using the Veloforte products. They seem to sit with my stomach quite well. But eating Veloforte bars and gels, as palatable as I find them, eating them for the entire ride never sat well for me. So having that mix of something like a rice cake from Hannah Grant's cookbook or one of these World Tour chefs, that always just seemed to work well. Or even a baguette. I'm exposing my time racing in France there, where you literally get sandwiches going out training off the DS, but it works.
Yeah. You have to just change things all the time. You should be eating all kinds of some salty, some sweet, some like just different all the time. As if you try to do like I do these long rides, if I try to eat for like 12 hours just one thing, it'll just after a while you just like you cannot nothing through these lips, and then it just starts a downward spiral.
Okay, my turn. The one I wish I knew at the very start, I call it now headless chicken riding. When I started out cycling, I didn't know anything about different training zones. Now I know there's zones one, two, three, four, five, and there's a associated physiological adaptation with spending time in each of these zones. Like if I want to increase my ability to oxidate fat, if I want to improve my mitochondrial density, I'll spend time riding in zone one and zone two. I knew none of that. So headless chicken, I was going out the door with no plan, no idea what ride I was doing. And I was essentially just trying to maximize my available training time. And what that looked like for me was defaulting into always riding kind of hard. So if I had an hour available or 90 minutes available, I went out and it was always tight chain. It was always nearly like a TT for the available amount of time I had. If it was 4 hours on a Sunday or it was an hour on a Tuesday, it was just hard. And what ended up happening to me there was I defaulted into zone three. And not that there's anything inherently wrong with riding in zone three, but I only ever got the narrow benefit of those physiological adaptations associated with zone three. And I never got any of the benefits of riding in zone one, zone two, zone four, zone five, zone six. And it took me years to figure out that there's a better way to do this.
Well, I mean, the trap of zone three that new cyclists need to know and don't know is that it feels like you're riding really hard, but you're actually not riding that hard. So if you're just like, oh, I'm gonna go out and do a hard ride, you'll default to zone three, but really you need to be in zone four, five, six if you're gonna ride hard, and you can't do that all the time. So yeah, I mean that's a really good, and that's actually that was on my list too, which is just the idea that you shouldn't be riding hard all the time. And I have since learned that you can actually be a really strong cyclist never riding hard. Not that you necessarily want to do that, but like you could.
Yeah, the problem with riding medium hard all the time is it's so fatiguing because you're never riding easy that when it does come time to ride really, really hard, you don't have that freshness. And I
Absolutely.
talked to Joe Frio recently on the podcast, and he's 80 and he looks phenomenal. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the author of Cyclist Training Bible. He
Yes.
looks phenomenal at 80 years of age. He was saying to me the secret to it is two super hard workouts per week. But super hard means super hard. Like your VO2 max efforts were described to me by an old coach, Michael Barry, as go until you see Jesus. And I
Yeah,
say
that's
this
a
all the
great
time to
description.
clients, go till you see Jesus. But you can't do that if you're riding around like 90% of your time in zone three. You're too fatigued.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just talking to a friend about how he said I think I test better than I can actually ride. And he had this idea that like he was somehow t breaking his FTP test. And I was like, no, it's just threshold is really hard. People don't think that, like, people have no concept that threshold is really hard. And if you just try to do whatever without that sort of structure, yeah, you won't really be in threshold. You'll be in zone three and you'll just be like, kind of hard, not hard.
You know what? We're so conditioned to watching the pros on TV and hearing this, like, oh, and they done a narrower threshold on this climb, or they rode the last climb at 7.6 watts per kilogram. We don't realize that these people aren't human. These are closer to robots than they are humans. They're like cyborgs from another planet. Like most of us have conflicting demands on our time, and that means conflicting demands on our energy and multiple ways that our cortisol is getting driven up. So for us to go out and do 225 minutes after work at threshold, that's a hard workout.
Yeah, it is really, really hard.